Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for another one of Mike's training blogs. And let's jump straight into it. Although I'm going to dispel some really silly questions I get. And you know, guys, at a certain point, you're just going to get banned for being a troll. Asking me if he has the same last name as me, that's absolutely stupid. Asking, oh, is he a special needs lifter? No, your question is stupid. If you ask stupid ass questions like that, you really need to be banned. Right? We're here to discuss serious strength training, not nonsense. So we started off his week with a bench press against bands. Got a good PR there. We're seeing the same general trend come out though on those. He is a little slow right off the chest, and then he locks out really strong. Again, it has to do with the fact that Mike has really strong triceps. Really strong triceps. We're going to push back in the direction of just general chest and floor pressing and stuff for him. So what we're seeing right here, pause benching. We're doing pause benching. And this week I'm still doing something a little different. I think a little more tricep dominant after this. Or actually I think we did incline after this. So I gave him another week of incline, but his next block we're going to all pause bench and floor press. Why? Because look at where he slows. Look at where his sticking points are on the lifts. He sticks right off the chest. Okay, he sticks right off the chest. Now, even though he's hit a floor press PR recently, and he probably has a bench PR in the tank, and we're actually worried about his bench a lot less right now because we're trying to focus on deadlifting. So I'm pushing more and more of his training towards deadlift specialization, which you guys will see as we go, as deadlift is his weakest link. But today we went with, again, just changing things back up, a little bit of incline benching, and then this slot will be replaced with floor pressing for the next block. I've already written it out and given it to him, so he has it. So the next 2 weeks we'll be doing just pause bench and then floor pressing, and then we'll continue to do JM presses for his triceps. And no, I don't really rotate tricep movements for Mike because he can just go with reverse bands or take the reverse bands off and go back to straight weight on the JM press, and then we have 2 different movements. We rotate more of his chest pressing than anything. So then you guys see his reverse band JM presses. You know, and in Mike's case, we don't really care. We could argue about the right or the wrong way to do a JM press all we want. His triceps are big, they're strong, they grow no matter what we do. I don't care about him changing his form, I just want him using his triceps. Right? And in his case, his lockouts are super strong. And the guy has big arms. When we see some of the squatting and stuff from the side when he grabs the safety bar coming up, you guys will realize that. And I mean, he had big arms when we started, they've just continued to grow. That's why we don't vary anything we do for his triceps. It's just not necessary. It's a genetic strong point for this lifter. So we work a lot more on pecs, lats, shoulders, right? And we just let him play with JM presses with any form that he feels like. Then, in keeping with our trend of deadlift specialization, we do pull-ups. And I've made the case for that in all these videos of why I think the pull-up is possibly better than the chin-up. And he's done chin-ups in the past too. And there's no reason we can't rotate back and forth between them to avoid overuse or better muscle balance. But again, he doesn't have a problem building arms. Arms are not a problem for him. So we could say that really the extra bicep involvement from a chin-up doesn't matter for a lifter like this. Doesn't matter. Not like we care about big biceps anyways, and they're just going to grow as a result of pulling. Especially when you get strong. And look, this guy pulls a lot of weight on all these movements. His biceps get all the growth we need. We don't bother with curls. And again, he's got 18-inch plus arms, drug-free, and we don't need curls for him. You want to do curls, that's fine, but I always tell people if you overdo your curls, you end up with bicep tendon inflammation, and then you can't do pull-ups and chin-ups and rows correctly because your tendons are inflamed, and then you get a weak back. That's where it becomes a problem. If it interferes and causes inflammation to where we can't train our back correctly now because your bicep tendons hurt and your forearm hurts. So what we do for him, we focus right now on pin lay rows, rowing off the floor, pull-ups, and then we let him do the snatch grip high pulls. And as I've said before, the snatch grip high pull I feel carries over better to the bench than it will for the deadlift. Right, this is really just to stabilize and build his entire shoulder girdle up. It gives us a more stable platform for benching. Right, it raises the ceiling on your bench potential. And it helps you have that shelf up there. And it helps have that shelf to help build your squatting. But I honestly don't think this movement does a lot for the deadlift. It doesn't do a lot for the deadlift. Now, interestingly enough, we get over to his lower day, and he hit a big PR We went with a parallel box on the safety squat bar. He had like a 40-pound PR on this versus the last time we did it. He got 381. Now, for a lot of you guys who are sub 500-pound squatters, 381 on a safety squat bar, box squat, most of you sub 500-pound squatters are not going to be able to do that. Like if your max squat is 405, your max squat is 430, there is no way you are doing that. It's not going to happen. He's 90 pounds away from my best on that lift. And I'm a 600-pound squatter. That one shocked me. I was not expecting him to get that. I was not expecting it at all. We've been doing all this deadlift specialization training, and then we use the the squat variation like that. That's again, maybe uses a little less posterior chain, and he just crushes it. Now, it could be all the safety bar good mornings we recently added. I suspect that's a factor. Combined with the belt squats, if it just built his ability to squat anyways. So next week, I'm actually going to have him, or in the next block, we're going to go ahead and test his just normal box squat and see where it's at. And if he gets a big PR on the normal box squat with a straight bar, we need to go ahead and test his back squat again, because he'll be ready for a PR there. Right? He'll be ready for a PR. And it's funny how that works. You know, we do these systems like this to where I'm pushing him towards more and more deadlift specialization, other than just the belt squats is the only real squat accessory, and the guy's supplemental squat lifts are just PRing like crazy. And it's the way it works. That wasn't really intentional. We wanted to work on his deadlift. But I think it goes to show you that the muscles involved with the deadlift, this is how much they're affected. This is how much they impact the squat. There's a tremendous amount of carryover between these two lifts. You know, depending upon the style you do also. Right? There's tremendous carryover between your squatting and deadlifting muscles. And then we could even discuss that with sumo. I did that video the other day explaining why you should do sumo and conventional and what they do differently, right? Of course, for Mike, we do train both. We train both, as you should. Most lifters would benefit, and most athletes. Let's just don't necessarily say powerlifters. Technically, powerlifter could pull with the one style they're going to do in competition. But let's talk about building a more well-rounded base. We get better general carryover to our strength if we train both. And again, training both meaning speed work and max work. I don't mean you need to do heavy work sets. But his belt squats are continuing to go up, and then again, reverse hypers at the end. And that's the name of the game. So what are we doing to deadlift specialize? Well, we're hypertrophying the deadlift muscles. And how are we doing that? Pull-ups, rows, safety bar, good mornings, reverse hypers. That is how we're going to build his conventional. That's what we're doing to build it up. Okay? This block, we still kept the pulling volume the same. Next block, which you guys will see when we start doing the videos on it, we are taking his rep work and taking it higher for the speed pulls. I'm going to give him 8 doubles, right? And I'm going to reduce his squatting to compensate so we end up with similar amounts of volume. And I'm going to take him to sumo next block. And I have a feeling that at the end of that block, I think he's going to have a deadlift PR. We will probably come up and test his normal conventional deadlift within a month. In about a month, I'm going to test it, and I'm going to predict a big PR. And in fact, I'm predicting his back squat's going to go up tremendously also. Then we went over to speed bench, and he had sent me a message. He wasn't happy with his speed bench this week. He felt it was like crap, that it wasn't fast. I haven't looked at the footage. I've actually put all the footage from this week into this file, and I'm seeing it with you guys for the first time as I'm voicing over. Now, that didn't look bad to me, so I'm not quite sure what he's worried about there, talking about his speed work didn't go well, felt slow. No, it looks pretty good to me. And notice he just keeps getting stronger on benching. We've reduced pressing volume. His supplemental pressing volume is lower. Right, what are we doing, like 5 sets? Right, 5 sets on max effort days. 2 sets of a supplemental lift after speed pressing and then JM presses. And his benching is still going up. Right? His benching is still going up for a natty lifter with over a decade of training. If your volume is targeted correctly, these lifts go up. Right? It's not necessary for you to do enormous amounts of benching volume to keep your bench moving. It's just not necessary. And you get your practice off the speed work for your setup. And then again, we did a little incline here. And like I said, this will be the last time we do incline for a while. I want to focus on middle and lower chest development. And you know, the lifts we're going to do hit the upper chest too. There's some misconceptions, and again, because of silly bodybuilders, that things like floor pressing and flat benching don't work your upper chest. That's just simply not true. Simply not true. The incline's just a little bit different in that you work a lot more deltoid. A little more emphasis on the upper chest versus the lower. But it still works the lower chest to some extent, just like flat benching and floor pressing work the upper chest. In fact, we could argue that closed grip benching works the upper chest pretty well too. Right? Works the upper chest reasonably well. It's the lower chest that doesn't get quite as involved when we close grip bench. Upper chest, delts, and triceps get a higher priority. So, again, we don't have to go crazy with his pressing volume, and his bench is still going up. I bet he's going to have a bench PR coming up in the near future. We just hit that floor press PR. So I'll probably test his flat bench coming up. I'm going to let him test some other floor work and axle bar bench and everything first. And if those all PR, then we know we've got a bench PR, and then we'll test it. But again, because he has so many other PRs on the classic lifts coming, I don't want to overload him with a focus on that, particularly when we're not trying to push the bench as hard as possible at the moment. We're really trying to focus on the deadlift. Yet, still, his squatting and benching go up, because we still have appropriate amounts of volume and workload there with good programming. And good programming matters. Okay? And for a lot of people who can't afford a coach, you can't afford me for coaching, look at the templates you see me laying out with this guy. You're watching him hit PRs in real time over several months. You can look at the spreadsheets and how I program him. This is what good programming looks like, not necessarily just for powerlifting, because a lot of people don't like conjugate for powerlifters. But it works well for athletes in general. All my fighters run conjugate, all of them. My boxers, MMA, BJJ, all those people. We use conjugate for them very successfully. And again, his normal setup that we've been doing: pull-ups, pen lay rows, snatch grip, high pulls. And we might change that up a little bit. I might have him, if I'm worried about overuse, we might take the pen lay rows out to a snatch grip row, because we're shoulder width right now, which I feel gives the best overall development. I could take him to a snatch grip if I need to. Right? That's a good way to break things up. I can change him back to chin-ups if we start to feel any overuse on pull-ups. We can rotate these things as needed, but that gives us variation. Same thing, if I want to take a snatch grip high pulls to a normal high pull, again, we get variation. All we have to do is change a grip if we're worried about overuse or we're stalling on a movement. All that's necessary. And it works. And then we'll get over to his dynamic lower day, which I'm about to put him back to a lot more straight bar work. I've had him doing a lot of safety bar work for dynamic, and I think this next block, this is going to be his last part of the wave where we're going to use a safety bar for this. I want to get him back on a straight bar a little bit, get used to it again, see how our strength is relative to the safety bar he's been using a lot. Right, because we don't necessarily need the safety bar for amazing deadlift carryover at the moment, because he's doing all his good mornings with a safety bar, and we're getting good carryover to the safety bar squats. So I think that's going to be our ticket for that, and then we can put a little more weight, because I suspect he'll be stronger again with the straight bar. Again, we'll change it back up so we avoid some overuse, because I don't want to just beat his upper back up too much in his T-spine. I don't want to beat it up too much. But his speed work looked pretty good today. I'd like him to pause a little longer on the bench, but that's okay. So we'll come over again, speed pulls. These are on a deficit. For those who notice, he's on a 1-inch deficit for these. We're not doing these standard conventional. They're off of a deficit with bands. So we run 30% of max for band tension. And he's still doing singles. Next wave, we go to doubles. Right, I want to get him to get 16 pulls in on speed days. And I'm going to bring his squats down to the same volume, and then eventually I may drop it down to 6 and 10. What you guys see me doing at the moment. Right? And we'll take him to sumos next time. Again, we alternate the deadlift style. I like to do a wave of conventional, a wave for sumo, back and forth. Again, it builds a broader strength base. It lets us get more total pulling volume in without overreaching issues and overuse issues. You can train one while the inflammation recovers from the other. And then again, his safety bar good mornings. One thing you guys will notice, I always tell people on most good mornings we don't want to round the back at all. You will notice the upper back rounds a little bit with the safety bar. It's almost impossible due to the nature of it. It's also the reason that it hits your traps so hard in the area of your T-spine, because it forces you into a bit of a rounding at the bottom no matter what you do. And you have to repop it back out. You have to push your back into extension on the way up. And on most good mornings, we actually want to keep that straight. We want to keep the back in extension. This bar forces you to do it a little bit different. And it creates for a really interesting training effect. It has a lot of benefits for that reason. That's one reason it carries over to the deadlift so effectively. I feel like things like the straight bar, the buffalo bar, the camber bar, they carry over better to your squat. My opinion. I feel like because of that extra middle back involvement, though, that the deadlift tends to benefit a little more from the safety bar. You know, if we had to pick and choose. Like, I think the safety bar, good morning, is one of the best, absolute best deadlift accessories you can possibly do for the conventional deadlift. Right, for the conventional deadlift. And then we finish up with his reverse hypers. And that's pretty much the end of Mikey's training week. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.